Welcome to Cybercast 2.0. I'm your host, James Mersall. With us today is Manuel Castillo, or Manny. Manny serves as the Senior IT Security Leader for the FBI, where he is responsible for leading the development and implementation of cybersecurity and defense practices for the global FBI enterprise in order to protect the organization against cyber attacks. Prior to his current appointment, Manny spent 6 years detailed to the National Security Agency, serving as the Director of Operations for Computer Network Operations and Director of Operations for Cybersecurity Operations. Today we talk to Manny about some of the FBI's newest initiatives in pursuit of cutting-edge technology and security at the FBI. We discuss cloud migration, including how to mitigate the privacy and chain of custody concerns law enforcement must consider. We also talk about risk management strategies, penetration testing, and red teaming. Finally, we discuss AI and automation, considering what it can and cannot do for law enforcement and national security. Thank you for joining us today, Manny. Let's get started.
All right. Well, thank you for the invite, James.
So first question, how is the FBI approaching security and its modernization efforts? And what is your approach to legacy systems?
I mean, as far as the FBI, we're in the law enforcement and national security business, if you want to call it line of business. And one of the things that is critical for the FBI is it's be able to deliver the information to not only from, the director, but FBI special agents in the field and analysts in a secure manner, intelligence that they need, in a timely manner, and be able to scale it across, a digital enterprise that we have, that it's global. A couple of approaches that we have taken. One is the cloud. Everybody's using the cloud for a couple of reasons. One, be able to scale what we do and be able to expand it at a moment's notice in case something happens.
Talking a little bit more about the cloud, I know the FBI has certain concerns considering privacy, making sure the data remains secure, and that you also maintain the chain of custody for law enforcement purposes. What has been your experience with balancing those considerations with cloud migration, if you can talk about that?
Well, I'll break it up in two parts. One, your first question, the data privacy section, and then the actual technical implementation, which to me, the technical piece is always easier than the compliance part. Now, as far as the FBI, we receive information from members of the intelligence community, such as NSA, CIA, highly sensitive information, which is classified most of the time. We also get information from victims. So if you have a victim, you need to protect that data. When people report to us a crime, or they're the victim of a crime, in this case, cyber, I mean, nobody should know but, the people that are investigating it. So data privacy is very high when it comes to the FBI. We have not only FBI regulations, but regulations by the Department of Justice as to, how you protect that data and how that data should be, only available to those that really need it. In a criminal case, I used to be a police officer in New Hampshire. Chain of custody is absolutely critical when it comes to criminal cases. Where was the evidence collected? Who collected it? And then how did it get there to an FBI repository? Now, when you're talking about digital evidence, it's all about, is this particular set of data the original data? Right, so that's usually accomplished by, either hashing the hard drive or, if it is a piece of malware. That particular data, it's very unique. You're going to have timestamps, who collected it, and so forth. I don't want to say it's a big shift on, how we do business, but it's something that, due to the digital age, it's something that, we have to incorporate.
As I mentioned, I was a contractor with the Department of Justice, fresh out of undergrad, in the crim division, but in the fraud section. And yeah, we lived and died by TrueCrypt. But when it came to actual physical evidence, accordion folders full of material from law firms that were cooperating with us, and often just wound up being a lot of CDs. So the cloud seems like a much more accessible and adaptable version to work with.
You still have to keep that chain of custody. Absolutely when it comes to criminal cases, because, that's going to go up to court discovery. How do we know that that piece of data is the actual data that came in? Right. If you're talking about fraud, particularly wire fraud, or any type of electronic, related commodity.
So what would you say is unique about the FBI compared to other federal agencies in terms of its cybersecurity opportunities and challenges?
One thing that is unique is the mission. So the mission of the FBI is to protect the United States from, in this particular case, cyber attacks, right? We protect the American public. We have a whole range of crimes under, the U.S., the 18th title. And when it comes to that, it's really broad authority to investigate federal crimes, not only, in the states, but, we could also, with the help of National Security Agency and CIA, make that connection overseas. We do from counterintelligence to cyber to terrorism, all of that stuff, not only crosses the U.S., but there is always a component that is overseas. whether you're talking foreign intelligence service or especially in the cyber arena, all the stuff that we get in pretty much it's coming from overseas. So when it comes to the authorities, everything is different. National Security Agency is all foreign. When it comes to the opportunities, the FBI is in the middle of what I would call a digital revolution, where we're really trying to expand how we deliver IT services. It's all about customer service and being able to deliver information to whoever needs it in a timely fashion, but in a secure way. As far as that, as a matter of fact, a couple of years ago, the Cyber Division created, I don't want to say special classification, but they're really recruiting heavy for people that want to be special agents. They're going to carry a gun, have a shield, but have a background in computer science, forensics, some type of a IT background. In the last couple of years, we've been able to recruit people from the private sector. I don't want to name company, but people that, they want to use whatever they know, from an IT perspective to support, national security investigation. So and they're still going at it pretty heavy.
Dovetailing off of the overseas presence, I know at our cybersecurity forum in July, you mentioned the FBI has, I'm going to try to get the numbers right here, 56 field offices, 363 smaller offices, and of course the overseas presence. How do you coordinate effective cybersecurity across such a wide number of offices?
That's always a challenge for, not only for the FBI in particular, but for any organization, whether it's private or government, that has such a large footprint and then has a global footprint. Any Fortune 100 company that has stuff overseas and in the U.S. and mobile computers, network emails, it's a challenge because you have a lot of components that have a lot of authority to, or being delegated authority to do their own, I don't want to say information security, but you have to work with the customer and the system owners in order to get that done. Because with the manpower that you have at headquarters, you just can't do that globally. So it takes a lot of coordination, and then people know what the limits are, or, for this particular type of data, this is what you can do. And so there is a back and forth and negotiation as far as, what happens globally.
Kind of going back a few months, I think it was April was National Supply Chain Security Month. Think about that as a national security priority from both CISA, OD&I, across the IC and national security more broadly. What is your office doing to secure the supply chain, and what risk management strategies have you adopted in pursuit of that? So
my office, if you want to call it cyber defense for the FBI, we don't work directly with supply chain. Now, we are the people that sometimes need to remove stuff that is not, maybe it wasn't I don't want to say approved, but there was a flaw or there was an order that came down from the president and this particular piece of software or equipment needs to be removed. But the FBI as a whole, we work directly with the OD&I, the supply chain division in order to protect not only the intelligence community, but private sector companies that may be targeted by foreign adversaries. And that could be anything from a product, whether it is a piece of software, even hardware, to products and services. So you could be getting a service where somebody is coming in remotely to fix, I don't know, your email, Office 365. We don't do that, but for a private company, there should be a method or some type of method. How do you evaluate third-party vendors? Basically, that's what it boils down to. Do you trust them? How do they vet their people? So when it comes to supply chain, you probably have seen, like the president, I believe it was 2 years ago, sign a presidential order, Kaspersky cannot be used in a government network. And then there was another one with Huawei. And it's all evaluating risk and whether or not, it's acceptable.
I think I remember some of the guidance you offered at our forum in July. Half of it is the Kasperskys, the Huaweis. There are the national security concerns. And sometimes it's just vetting for quality. The product from China that costs half as much might not be as durable or functional as you might hope.
Part of the issue when they're looking at, I'm not in those conversations. When they're looking at the totality of the product, it's not only who created the product, but how secure is it? Right. Quality control. Mm-hmm. Is this particular product a problem if I put it on my network? It's not only it's coming from China, but how is their quality control? How do they vet their product? How do they do their testing? So all of that comes into play, and somebody comes up and make a decision, and it comes down to the intelligence community and the government. This particular product cannot be used in a government network. Now, it may be used in a private sector setting, but not in my setting.
So also at our forum in July, you talked about your time on detail to the National Security Agency and your work with penetration testing. Could you talk a little bit more about what you learned during your time there?
So I was detailed over to the National Security Agency for 6 years, and 3 of those years I actually worked on the offensive side of the house. That's in a place called Taylor Access Operations as a director of operations. So our job there was very simple, was to collect intelligence, foreign intelligence for national security purposes. And when we're talking about collecting, that means you're going to go out and get it from somebody else. Because I'd say country, you want to know what your adversary is planning to do, what are they thinking. If you're looking at terrorism, what are they going to be attacking, what are the plans of Al-Qaeda and so forth. So my job was actually to direct the collection of intelligence, basically C&E on computers overseas. If you equate that to penetration testing, which is, somebody goes in and they're trying to find weaknesses in our networks. So they're basically emulating an attacker. If you hire a company, they want to do, a penetration testing job, and they're going to tell you, well, you have, the mail server. We found this particular vulnerability. We were able to trigger it. We were able to get there, and so forth. So the thing that I think that I mentioned back when we had the meeting is that my time at the NSA, especially in my last job, we had a red team that emulated attacker, but they will go out to DOD Company X, and then 2 years later we went back, and the things that were found on the initial assignment were not fixed. So you're really wasting your time. Mm-hmm. So if we tell you, this thing, you need to get it done or get it fixed, it's all about vulnerability management, which is not very sexy. So people prefer the penetration testing. In my book, it's a little further ahead. Concentrate on the basics. What do you have? What's your digital footprint? Assets, software, and then vulnerabilities, right? That's basically your attack surface.
Because as you mentioned, it's not as sexy as penetration testing or red teaming, but thinking about risk management and that strategy. What is your perspective on risk management, and what risk management framework or strategy is the FBI adopting?
Well, everything we do, it's all about managing risk. It's not going to be 0, and you don't want to have 100, right? For particular situations, risk is going to be higher depending on, where you work and what you're doing, and it's going to be different even within the FBI for a particular. For example, let's say that the SWAT team is sent in they got to rescue somebody, so you're going to take into account that there may be casualty on our end, but you need to get the hostage out. So it's all about managing that risk and the risk being aligning that with what your mission is. So you got to manage it, and it's all got to be acceptable to leadership.
I imagine it's a mix of figuring out what your highest value assets are, protecting those first, figuring out what critical vulnerabilities fit within the timeline or the budget for the agency as well.
Yeah, you always want to protect your crown jewels. People say, so you have to know what is the most valuable information you have. And, private or government businesses, they're all going to have different types of information, and that one is going to be critical. So if somebody takes whatever it is for a private business, like say the Coca-Cola, the formula to Coca-Cola, they will have an issue. They probably go broke. So it's all about managing that and, what's the acceptable risk or appetite for that. And you asked me about the framework. Most government agencies use the NIST cybersecurity framework. If you go private sector, they're probably using something like ISO 20, the 27,000, the 2701 series. COVID, so that's more of a private sector, government side. If you're talking risk-informed, it will be the NIST, cybersecurity framework.
So in your time as a federal IT professional and someone focused on cybersecurity, both offensively and defensively, what trends and evolving threats have you witnessed? And are there solutions to those threats that have evolved in time as well? And would you say those trends are changing at all?
In the last 5 years, what has really popped up that I can tell you, like, wow, that's a game changer in my mind. And it has to do with malware. And either on the nation state or even the criminal side, which, they're producing what I would say military-grade malware, especially because you have a whole bunch of people that are unemployed in Eastern Europe, and what you need is really good programmers, right? So I would say malware really has taken, you see ransomware and, the sophistication, and a lot of the stuff is not really nation state. It's just people with money, they're making money off of banks, and they're able to basically back up a ransomware program. So that's one thing that has really, in my mind, really stood up when it comes to, cybersecurity and how we deal, with malware. It's not only nation state, but organized, criminal enterprise.
Yeah, ransomware is the number one thing I hear about at conferences. It seems to have been only the past few weeks where it's really being brought to the forefront, but just the I guess, skill and speed at which a small group of hackers somewhere in the world can cause hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million of damage, whether it's the ransom they're asking for, or the data lost, or the harm to a company if it's in the private sector, or even the reputation in the public sector.
And the critical thing is that there's money to be made. So to a criminal, it's all about money. The times where a criminal went into a bank and they rob a bank, you don't really see that. And, that's very, very rare. They take the money from a bank through cyber means. They can be sitting on the other side of the ocean doing, going remotely and doing whatever the technique might be. And it's a lot safer. And how do you know who it is, right? So that takes a lot of time trying to figure out who's at the other end. The other thing is wherever you put the information, the criminal or the nation state will go there. I think at the initial meeting we were talking about the cloud. If you put it on the cloud, they're going to go to the cloud. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about cloud security, that's something you have to deal with. How much information you put there. Is it secure, or are you encrypting it? So if you put it up on the moon, they'll figure out a way to put it up on the moon. From the nation state perspective, it's all about, I need that information to make decisions. From the criminal side, it's all about making money. So it's a back and forth of they do this and then we do that and we counter this. So that's not going to end.
A little bit of being proactive, of understanding that no matter how proactive you are, they're going to keep trying to get ahead of you, I guess.
I don't want to say that's part of the business. You have something they want, right? And your job is to protect it. And you have to be proactive. If you sit there just waiting for somebody to come in, maybe somebody's already in and you don't know it. And then that gets into, how do you monitor your systems and how good is your, algorithms and what do you do? Or, we have little things that we do on the sensors and, and sensors that we can deploy dynamically to throw people off. But it's all about what is the adversary doing, and all that's driven by, threat intelligence, right? What do you know about your adversary?
So another question we ask our participants on Cybercast is, what is a major initiative or challenge in cybersecurity that's not being talked about, or perhaps not being talked about enough?
There's a couple of, I don't want to say buzzwords, but, people are talking about AI, and AI is going to, it's a great technology, but there's always limitations on technology. And I think what people need to understand is that you have limitations. It's still a computer trying to figure out, whatever you're trying to tell it, but you have to develop a model, right? And then if you have a model and I have a different one, how do we reconcile that? So there's challenges to all type of technology, and that's one that people think is going to solve everything. Every time that comes up, and it really never does. So one thing is, know your limitations.
I think that seems to be another running trend I hear is there are a lot of agencies that want to chase the shiny object, which right now is AI or maybe just automation in general. But making sure you have a use case for it at the very least and know what it can do and what it can't do is pretty key.
I think there's a lot of potential in it, but that's not really like a magic bullet that's going to solve all your problems. And it goes back to a balance, like what can you do with it? And, where is it that it's going to fail you, right? So if you know that, I think you're in a really good position. It's knowing your weaknesses, not only, within your infrastructure, but with your technology. What can it tell you? It's sort of like an IDS, an intrusion detection system. It's not going to tell you everything. It's going to miss a few stuff. But you need to know, where's that balance?
Yeah, it's not the perfect solution.
No, but it's a good solution.
So looking towards the future, what are you focusing on next for the FBI? Are there any challenges that you're preparing for in advance or opportunities that you have in mind?
As a matter of fact, AI is one of the things we're looking at. Machine language, whether you're talking, supervised or unsupervised, it's a really good way to dig through big data information to find out trends and patterns, right? Because it's not feasible for a person to be doing that. So talking about AI, yeah, I mean, I can see we're looking at both actually to not only to look at cyber data, but any type of data, whether you're talking data for crimes or data for the businesses are trying to figure out how much water we're consuming. So because it's all about data, now we collect everything, and that causes problem. How do you deal with it? Data management is huge.
That's great to hear. I wouldn't say I have a background in intelligence, but I worked as an intern for a company or a group that does a lot with the IC. And it's interesting hearing from a summit a couple of years ago, there was very much an AI will not replace the human analyst. It's there to assist. And now it's much more it enables the human analyst to do the higher level of work. If you can use AI and ML to coordinate all the data, you can start using it a little more effectively. So that sounds sort of in line with what you're saying.
Because, I mean, one of the things, like, for example, I always see the global SOC for the FBI. I mean, when you're looking at data coming from a whole bunch of sensors, you're going to have 1,000 events, right? So how do you know which is priority? So one thing that you can do is basically, if you develop a model, say, if this happened in this particular situation, let the technology give you what is important for that day, because you're not going to be able to handle the traffic, right? So in that respect, you want the person to be looking at the most critical things that are happening, in whether using Splunk or any other type of theme, and let the machine deal with the data.
Thank you again for appearing on our podcast, and we can't wait to see what comes next from the FBI, or at least what we know about the public knowledge next.
Okay, well, thank you for the invitation, James.
Cybercast is a production of Government CIO Media and Research. It is hosted by James Mersal, produced by Amy Kluber. For more podcasts, head to governmentcio.com/podcasts. If you're interested in sponsoring a podcast, contact us at sponsor@governmentcio.com.